everybody. It is Lee Milteer, and welcome to the Blonde Warrior Show. Please check out the links below, and please like and comment and subscribe to the Grassroots Warrior Network. Please, we are all volunteers, so any donations or subscriptions will help us with our cost of bringing you the truth. It's very appreciated. Now, our show today is always about solutions, so I want you to take notes. We have someone very powerful. The name of our show is Unleashing Your True Potential, One Ripple at a Time. And we have an amazing teacher that I have so much in common with. It's incredible. Karen Vizer, and she has spent years studying the field of mental conditioning and unraveling the profound impact of habitual patterns, fears, and limiting beliefs that hold us all back, literally, from achieving our dreams and embracing our truest selves, particularly in today's world. Now, she has a track record of transforming thousands of lives, and she empowers her clients to shed old beliefs, old coding, and programming that hinder their desired lifestyles. She has even worked with trauma survivors, so she's very capable of helping us work with ourselves. And she has spent 15 impactful years as an executive in the healthcare industry. So I'm sure she knows a lot of secrets. She is armed with degrees in nursing and chiropractic, and she has acquired her coaching education from esteemed institutions like Corporate Coach University and Coach U. And Karen also possesses extensive knowledge on alternative energy healing modalities. And her favorite mentor, who, by the way, was also one of mine, is the one and only Raymond Grace, who is very famous for saying everything is energy and all energy can be transformed. And that's why we want to have someone like Dr. Karen here with us, who is internationally known, and her passion is to help other people. So she's going to help us a little bit today, and we're going to talk about one of our favorite books. So welcome, Karen.
Oh, Lee, thank you. I feel so blessed and so grateful to get to be with you. I have admired you and followed you for years. So it's a blessing. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, you're a blessing to me today. So Karen and I actually sort of started talking on Facebook about one of our favorite books of all time, and this is Dr. David Hawkins. Now, he's not the wheelchair Hawkins about space. He was a psychologist, and he passed away a number of years ago. And I'm sure you can appreciate this, Karen. When he passed away, I actually cried. And I had never met him in person, but I had been such a devotee of his teachings, YouTube videos. I used to play all of his YouTube videos in all of my Vision Quest. And so I wanted you to start off today because his book is called The Hidden Detriments of Human Behavior. So you're very, in fact, to be honest, you're one of the few people I know who is really into this kind of high-powered information. So talk about what you learned, or what was important to you about this book, and how you think it can transform people into more powerful, empowered, working in the world every day.
That's a great book, Lee, and I too cried when he passed. I had the pleasure and opportunity to meet with him and work with him. I went to 2 seminars in Sedona that he had that were long weekends. And that was after reading Power versus Force. And I never really resonated a whole lot with his other books, but this one was so impactful. And I think one of the things that struck me was that he said in the book, most people, because of their choices that they make and their decisions, actually, you're born into a level of consciousness, and then your level of consciousness can actually drop. And that scale is exponential. So it's not, 5 points on that scale is huge. It's not just like, it's not like 5 degrees. It's enormous. And so I was studying a lot of different things at the time, and I had an intuitive sense that there had to be, I always operate with, if there's a problem, God has a solution for it. And so, or spirit or consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And so I went and studied with him with the intention of really finding how I could take his information and help my clients raise their level of consciousness, and raise my own level of consciousness too. It was a very selfish endeavor because I wanted it. I wanted higher levels. And so I had the pleasure of being able to study with him and to really absorb the information. It was so impactful. And one of the things that he talked about, which Greg Braden talked about later, but I think David Hawkins was the originator of it, was that idea that one person at a higher level of consciousness offset so many people who were at the lower level of consciousness. And that for me was so impactful, because I thought, well, if we can raise the consciousness of one person, myself or someone else, through this work, then we can offset the lower levels of consciousness. And I think that's still very important, very true today, that the better human being I can be, the better human being I can help my clients become, the more impactful we are in terms of the whole energetic thing we're experiencing on the planet right now.
So one of the things I'm just going to show real quick, I don't know if people can see it, it's just one of his charts. And what they talk about when Karen is talking about, lower levels of consciousness, just to give you a little bit of a range, there's enlightenment, there's peace, joy, love, reason, acceptance, willingness, neutrality, courage, pride. Then it starts to fall. Anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. And shame, which our society is fraught with, is always about, keeping people in a low consciousness. So could you explain some of this to people?
Absolutely. David Hawkins identified the level of 200 as the critical level of courage and integrity, and anything below 200 was not as helpful. And I was rereading these levels the other day, and it struck me, especially the level of pride, and how what he said about that. And let me see if I can find that, because I bookmarked it in here, I think. But pride is based on fear. And all of these lower levels of consciousness are really based on fear. So one person at a level of 400, which is pretty much where a lot of your educators would be, your university professors, one person at a level of 400 counterbalances 400,000 below 200. So it's really significant. One person at level 500, which is love, counterbalances 750,000 below 200. So I think the single thing that we can do the best is to be the best version of ourselves and to raise that level. And to look at the emotions. So the emotions that are connected to the different levels of consciousness. And so when you're at the lower level of shame, there's humiliation. And really, everything is energy, and all energy can be transformed. So often the humiliation I find when I work with clients, or the shame or the guilt, comes from a narrative or a story that they have enabled. And what I've learned is, and it's really interesting, is that about 95% of our programming and conditioning comes before we're 7 years old. And it's not until we're 7 that we get critical thought. So this is all being driven by the reptilian brain, or the lizard brain, which is what marketers market to, the amygdala, very real part of the brain, and then the limbic. And so if you know that, and you know that this white noise is running you, and it came from before you were 7, before you could make before you had critical thought, then why wouldn't you want to find that stuff and question what you're really believing and let go of the shame, let go of the guilt, let go of these lower levels? I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. And yes, I think because all of us who are in, our world have studied, how did we get this program? When did we get it? And it's definitely before 7 years old. And, in today's world where people are giving their 7-year-olds $1,300 phones and things like that, where they're exposed to God only knows what, even though the parents who give them always say, oh, well, they have very strict guidelines of what they can do and who they can call and what they can see. But I was a kid and you were a kid. And if there was a rule that I could break, I definitely broke it. And the minute someone pointed out, don't go there, that's the first place I went. And so, I think parents really need to wake up, not only for their own programming, but, what they're saying around the dinner tables, what they're talking about, who they're for, who they're against, that sort of thing. And some of the old ways of using, as we were just talking about shame, like shame has words around it called miserable, humiliation, all that kind of stuff that just makes people kind of really sad. I started the book because it was recommended to me by someone I really admired, Raymond Grace. And so, by the way, Raymond Grace, if you want to look him up, he is a very famous dowser. And dowsing is using kinesiology, and it is testing energy for the most part to make it easy. And I'm a big believer in kinesiology. I'm a big believer in chiropractor, and that's really where I originally got involved with kinesiology. And I was fascinated that someone could test how I was feeling or what my levels were in certain things without using like blood or big machines or things. But once I got into like understanding pendulum and dowsing and things like that, it completely changed my life because I test things. Like, if there's vitamins in here and I'm deciding, do I need these vitamins right now? Or does my body want these vitamins right now? Maybe you think I'm crazy to do that, but it's very beneficial for me. I know the right vitamins on the right time and simple things. But I do recommend that everyone invest in the book, read the book, and I will be first to tell you that your first exposure to it will be what? Oh my, I don't understand anything. Right?
Yeah, it's not an easy read because we have so many assumptions about what's real. And then it really does challenge your thought processes. And I think we've been programmed and conditioned as society to lie to ourselves, to not look at what we don't want to see. And so I think it's a great wake-up call. But yes, it might be, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Well, I read it the first time and then I said, okay, I have a little basis of knowledge. I'm going to read it again. I also read it with another person, so we got to discuss it. And that was very beneficial. In fact, you might want to do a class on that sometime. I think people would really love that. And speaking of that, I know you've worked with this book in clients. So share with us how, this consciousness shifting has helped them, what steps they took, and what lessons we can learn from their journey of trying to have a higher consciousness.
Well, that's a great question. Years ago when I was married, before my husband passed, he passed in 2002. I was studying with Thomas Leonard. He was one of my mentors, and he was the father of the coaching movement. And Thomas was absolutely brilliant. He was a genius, and he had research and development committees. And at that time, we didn't have this type of technology. So we used conference calls, and Thomas taught he had written a book called The Portable Coach. And one of the things he identified in that book was needs and how needs drive behavior. And he taught that you had to know what your needs were so you could inform your circle of influence about that. So you could create this workaround because, for example, if you needed to be heard, you'd repeat yourself over and over and over again. And so you'd have, it would be almost like a safe word, to let you know that you were heard. And I was listening to him one day and I was like, gosh, I am not going to do that. And if I'm not going to do it, my clients aren't going to do it. I knew that well enough. And my husband had the need to be perfect. His mother had been in Auschwitz. She was a perfectionist. He had taken that on. And no matter how he tried to cognitively override it, he couldn't do it. And so I thought there's got to be a solution to this. And when he passed, we had peace about that. But he was like one of these people, he could walk into the room and move something a quarter of an inch in any direction, and it would change the whole energy of the room. So he just had that gift. And so if someone came and cleaned the house and they didn't put this here, it would make him nuts. And he knew it, but he couldn't override it. And so after he passed, I said, I was having a conversation with God one day, and I said, you didn't give us any problems without solutions. Show me how to shift this. And so I was taken on a really interesting journey. And I first started working with clients using radionics and bioresonance devices. And I had a bioresonance device, and I had actually 4 of them because I was traveling, and I could do a seminar with 12 people with 4 machines, 3 on each machine. And I was traveling, but I needed a separate suitcase to schlep all that stuff to London or Honolulu or Canada, wherever I was going. And so one day there was a quantum physicist who was doing a seminar, a workshop at the Institute of Mental Physics, which was in Joshua Tree and was near me. And I was invited to go. So I packed up my machine because I was very, very enamored of it, I guess I should say. And I got up there and I'm showing it to him, and I can't remember his last name. His first name was Val. And he looked at me and he goes, Karen, you don't need that thing. You're every bit as good as it. All you need to do is find the fear. All fear is fear of change. It differentiates into 3 major categories. That's fear of not being good enough, fear of being left behind, and fear of the unknown. He said, just find the fear and you can shift it. You don't need that machine. Well, I didn't believe him. So, because I was very attached to it. So I implemented what he taught me about fear into my work with clients, but I still use the machine. And one day I had a client in my living room because I had to work in person. I couldn't work remotely at that time. And I felt the energy shift, and I reached out to turn the machine off and realized I hadn't turned it on. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. So I was guided and learned how to find the thought forms, the beliefs, the programming, the conditioning, and how to shift it, how to neutralize it. And I had some other really interesting experiences. I don't know if you ever read the book, Lee, The Culture Code. It was written by a man who was a cultural anthropologist. His name was Clotaire Rapiel. I'll send you a link to it. Fascinating book. But he talked about how marketers market to the lizard brain, or the amygdala. And it's always fear. And so he was a man that was employed by Fortune 500 companies to find out how to market to the lizard brain, and they would do these focus groups. So that was, when I found that was very impactful, because I then was able to integrate that into what is the fear, what is the person really experiencing. In my work over the years, when I started working more with people who had trauma, I found that there was a 4th fear, and that fear was like an umbrella over everything else. And that was the fear that it would happen again. And that would cause people to really shut down. So the image that I used for years, and I'm starting to use it again because it's so impactful, is that of a cone. And at the top of the cone is the field of all opportunity. That's where our freedom is, where our choice is, where we get to create. But through life, through the insults and injuries, we tend to spiral downward, and we're operating in that lower 20%. And so many people feel like they're in a pressure cooker. There's nowhere to go. They don't know what to do next. And once we start neutralizing that coding, the programming, the belief systems, the narratives, they start spiraling upward and have much more available to them and more bandwidth. And I hope that answered your question. It was a little bit of a long one.
Oh, that's great. So tell me, the fourth fear is about they're afraid it will happen again. You mean whatever fears they
If
have?
someone had trauma, if someone was traumatized, for example, sexually abused or physically abused as a child, that kind of puts a lid over everything. In the experience that I've had with people. So you have to get them to the point that they recognize that they're no longer that 3-year-old or that 4-year-old or that 5-year-old, and that they actually have the power now to say no.
So that brings up a very interesting question on why do you believe that people are presented with evidence of truth in our reality today, but are completely shut down to allowing that truth to be in their own world? So I'm talking about truthers sharing things to, we'll call them civilians,
Non-truthers.
poor souls. I mean, I'm fascinated with conversations I have with people where I can actually, here's documents, here's proof, here's this, here's that, and they're like this. I hear it, and I had just last week a pilot from Delta who lives across the street from me, and we were talking at the mailbox about something, and he brought up a subject, and I was like, oh, well, I know all about that. And I started giving him information. He literally, a grown man, that goes, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And I finally said, okay, no problem. And I left, but I was flabbergasted. So what is holding these people in this stage of complete disbelief?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One is we've been programmed and conditioned to believe that we don't have the power, that it's outside of us, and that the government's going to take care of us. The FDA takes care of us. They wouldn't do that to us. The big problem, I think, Lee, is that we judge everything through the filter of what we would do. And if I wouldn't do it, I can't believe somebody else would.
People actually use that phrase, Karen. They actually say, well, I just can't believe that anyone would ever do that. I mean, it's just foreign that something like that would happen to me. I remember a couple of years ago, just as the pandemic started, I'm very clear when I say that. I had workmen in yesterday, and I was referring to that. And one of them kept saying, I don't understand what the pandemic is. And I went, well, you just lived through 2 years of it, so that should help you a little bit. But I mean, people just actually say, I cannot believe that people I love and trust, the news or the government, or specifically, she talked about her physician. She said, my physician is as honest as they come. And I said, because we don't want to get thrown off anywhere, even with all the, cures. And she absolutely believes that if her doctor recommended this, that it had to be gold. It had to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, she's withering away into some very bad things.
Well, they don't want to believe that their physicians were paid
Right
to do a certain thing. And I've known this for years because I worked in healthcare, which is not healthcare, it's disease management. And you would not believe you would believe, but the average human would not believe the amount of money and incentives doctors are given by drug companies, for example, to peddle their stuff. And I had some incredible experiences. That's probably another conversation for another show, where the doctors would flat out ask the drug company for money. And I was in the room one day when a physician had asked that, and the drug rep asked me to go to the meeting. And I went to the meeting, and I was told abruptly to leave the room because the drug company representative said to the physician, "Doctor, we cannot give you a check for $25,000, but we'd be happy to donate $25,000 to your charity of choice." And I was dismissed. So it's very real. And so if my dad always taught me, my dad had some issues, but he was also a very brilliant man. He was an engineer, and he always taught me, if you can't figure it out, follow the money or the power. If it doesn't make sense, look at the money first. If it's not money, it's power.
Yes, many years ago, I got invited. I was in commercial real estate, and I was leaving that because there was a lot of corruption in that. And I actually interviewed for a job with Johnson's and Johnson to be the rep for sutures in this area. And I made it up to, it was between two people. And so because I was the last interview and everything, and they really got very specific. And they talked about that this was something that happened and how to handle that situation and what to say and what to do and things like that. And I'm not going to go into that for obvious reasons here, but I was so stunned at the time that there was this exchange going on, pay to play kind of thing. And I was like really not leaning on taking the job. And then they gave me some other information that made me absolutely clear I was not taking the job, because there was some real, let's just say my view of my integrity, I could not have lived with myself doing this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it was very lucrative, and I know a gal who took the job, she's still in the job. It's a long, long time, and she's incredibly wealthy. I mean, serious bucks. But her integrity level was completely different than mine. And so it's worse than ever. Yes.
And the vacations, the golf clubs, the dinners, the expensive champagnes, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. The incentives to represent a particular drug in a particular field. And so I just think people are naive, and they have assumptions. We make assumptions. The Four Agreements, a great book, one of the agreements is never make assumptions.
Right.
But we make assumptions based on what we would do or who we are or how we behave. And that leaves no room for an awareness that things may not be as we think they are. They may not be as they've been presented to us.
So that leads me to the next question, which is basically, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to break free of some of these illusions and expectations and embrace, the truth more? What would you suggest they do?
Well, it would depend on the situation. I think that you can go down the rabbit hole, and I don't know that that's really useful, because you could spend time is our most precious resource, and you don't need to do that. But I think if you're looking at something in your life, for example, that's a struggle or a challenge, one of the really great tools that I give my clients to use is tool of journaling. I cannot let go of this because, so I cannot let go of this belief because, and if you write that down and you just don't judge it and you list everything that comes to mind, you're going to be blown away by what comes up. You know, my mother wouldn't like it, or Aunt Sally told me it was different, or that wasn't what I learned, or that might cause somebody to not like me. I mean, it's the things that people come up with when they do a journaling prompt like that are really very telling. And then you can look at each of those things and go, do I really, individually, do I really believe this? What do I really believe about this? And that challenges you to open to different possibilities. And I think that's really a powerful tool. It's a journaling exercise that I do with clients. It's one I also often give clients to do. Another thing is to be in gratitude and appreciation, because the more we express gratitude and appreciation, the more we raise our vibration, and then that brings to us new things. And it was interesting. I had an experience yesterday with the temperatures have been very warm here in Arizona, and we've been up to 115. Yesterday it was about 111, and I noticed that on my car, it gave a warning to check the tire pressure. And so it was really interesting because I watched my mind do, it was the two tires on the driver's side that have lower pressure than the two tires on the other side. And they were being signaled as a problem. And I'm like, and so like the first place my mind wanted to go was, oh no, I'm going to have to replace two tires. And then I was like, that's stupid. You don't really know that. You know, what if you don't have to replace two tires? And then I was like, okay, so I Googled the two tire places that were nearby and saw the one that had the highest reviews and said, well, I'll drive over there. And I got over there, and the girl that checked me in goes, oh, you probably have a nail in your tires. And I was like, well, you don't know that. And she goes, go park your car and come back and we'll get you checked in. And so then she's off doing something. This guy is there, and I told him what happened. He goes, oh, he said, ma'am, he said, during this time with the fluctuations in temperature, it's probably just that. I want you to go down here and have them put air in your tires, and we'll see if that takes care of the light or not. And it was so interesting because I could have created any of those scenarios if I had allowed my belief to go to them. But my belief was that my tires are intact. I'm going to have them checked because it's a safety thing, but I'm not going to project any possible negative outcome onto the future, which is where my brain really wanted to go in the beginning.
Well, that's a great story. And my first thought when somebody's saying, well, it's probably a nail. Well, let's see, what are the odds of two nails in the same tire at exactly the same time? Pretty,
Right.
pretty low. I love this about don't project negative thoughts into the future, because I think I listen to so many conversations with people predicting these horrible futures for us. And it annoys me beyond description, because we're self-fulfilling prophecies. We're much more powerful than people realize. When you use words, you are spelling, you know, if people are listening to us, they probably know what that means, but you're programming reality to be what you have said, because your word is power. Yes?
Absolutely.
And I remember, Karen, the very first time I was 16 years old. Long story, but basically I was I was a nightmare in high school, because I questioned everything, and I didn't believe practically anything they said. Like everything they taught me, I was like, well, how do I leverage this? How do I monetize this? How do I make a living from this stuff you're teaching me? And the teachers are like completely freaked out. And, you know, finally they send me to the principal's office, who doesn't know what to do with me. So you know what they did with me? they made me an assistant in the library, which, oh my God, was my guides looking after me that day. And within 3 days of being the assistant in the library, which I was really just supposed to be putting books away, this businessman came in and he has this big box of books. And on top of the box of books, I noticed the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol, and Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Well, I just lifted those 3 books and put the other books away and read all 3 of those books. And this gave me terminology and understanding that an average 16-year-old does not get, because my quest in high school was, what the hell am I going to do with myself? There's no money for college. There's no support from the family. They're all something else. I'm not sure I wasn't adopted, I mean, I was not like aligned with this family. And I had to find a way to make it on my own. And so me questing so much actually attracted the answers, with those books, because those books became my true hope that little Lee Milteer had a chance in the world, because all the predictions were that I had no chance in the world whatsoever, living on a farm 1.5 miles from the nearest secondary road and a population 60, and, this little nothing backwards town. So I'm very grateful that we have this power, and it's frustrated as probably both of us are that most people just simply don't want to accept that they have this power. Yes?
Yeah. And, for me, I look at it and worry is not being in the present moment. That's projecting a possible negative outcome onto the future. And everything is happening in the present moment. That's where the magic is. And so if we can train ourselves to stay there and to do as I did with that example about the tires, that's not where I'm going with this. And to stay in the positive, I do think that we have the opportunity to change everything that's happening on this planet, because we can offset with our higher vibrational frequency. We can offset all of those people that are doing the doom and gloom, and I don't believe for a minute any of that bad stuff is going to happen.
Well, so a friend of mine who's really astute at studying the history of government recently said to me, don't worry about all these bad things and bills and things that they're trying to do, because there's a couple of real facts about the government. Even if they pass it, it now has to go to a wad of people, and these are his terms, a wad of people who don't want to change, who are very slow to change and are very inept to begin with about change, and that it takes so long for that to sort of get into the system that a lot of it is dulled or, muted or things like that. So that was very comforting to me that, the government is slow.
Well, and we can't trust the news. We don't really, none of us really know what's going on.
Right.
But we do know that we have creator, God, source, consciousness, whatever you want to call that, doesn't matter to me, looking after us, if we allow that.
Yes. I've had a lot of experiences in my life growing up in the middle of nowhere. It was just me and nature. And I had a lot of experiences of, there's definitely an invisible power that looks after you and gives you intuition. And I call it instincts, that you instantly know I'm in a safe place or I'm not in a safe place, or I can trust this person or I cannot trust this person. I just, I really experience that all the time. And I think people actually keep their brains so busy with the unimportant that they don't have time to actually really listen to themselves. I love that you recommended journaling. I've been journaling really my whole life. And You'll probably find this amusing. I do. I found a bunch of journals that are probably about 25 years old. And because I moved my office and I had a big office, so they were all being stored somewhere. When we had to move them, I started reading them. They're quite hilarious. Phases that you go through in your life and what you think is important and what's not important and so forth and so on. So journaling it will always just, if you go back and look at your old journals, you'll feel so good about yourself today because you'll realize how far you've come. Well, before we leave today, I did want to ask you, because you said you had a tool to share, and I would love for you to share a gift to our audience.
Okay, well, I have a couple of things. I have I call it a, God, what did I call it? I changed the name of it. It's an inventory where you can actually see how you feel about your life and where you are, and kind of take an inventory. And I think it's really good to take an inventory of your life and where you are and where you're going, because we forget. We tend to beat ourselves up, and we forget just how fabulous we are and how much we've accomplished. And we tend to judge ourselves and beat ourselves up. So if you go in there and you take that inventory, then you can, and I think I sent you did I send you the link to it, Lee?
Yes, it's at, let's see, stan.store/Dr. Karen. I'm going to see if we
And
can,
that-
if we
Yeah.
can put this in
And
the.
that's a free resource, and it's just a great way to go, well, okay, where am I, and you can remember, you can contrast where you were, and then you can think about, where do I want to be, and have a vision for what you'd like to change. The other tool I have that is a very simple tool that I'll share with you for the audience. And it's such a great navigational tool, because our body is a compass, and your body will never fail you. So your body is your energy is either expanding, that's a yes, or it's contracting, that's a no, or it's neutral, which either means you need more information, or it doesn't matter if you have Chinese or Thai food, because you like them both equally. It's that kind of thing. So what I have my clients do is close their eyes, and I ask them to imagine that they're at a posh dinner party, and that the waiter comes and serves them something they would never eat. Like in my case, that would be liver. That would be a really not. And you can notice, if you think about that image, your energy collapses when you do that. And then and I use food because it's kind of a universal thing. It doesn't matter where in the world the person is. Everyone has food they love and hate. And then I'll say, okay, new scenario. The waiters just brought you your favorite food on the planet. For me, that might be a really nice chocolate molten lava cake or something like that. And you can feel how your energy expands. Well, your body's a compass. So if you go back to an experience that was a peak experience, and you go to the moment that you made that decision, you'll find that the energy in your body is expanded. And if you go to an experience where you had some regret, or you were like, oh, that wasn't the best choice ever, if you go to that decision moment, you'll notice that your body is contracted. And what happens is our intuition comes in and tells us what to do or how to be, the inspiration, the instinct. But then our ego mind comes in and overrules that and does the blah, 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 blah. Well, the ego always wins. And then it comes back and beats you up when it wasn't such a cool thing to do, or wasn't such a great experience. So it's a really useful exercise. And if you start to get in touch with what your body is doing, it will never fail you. And I had a client who was considering signing up for a $10,000 mastermind. And we did this exercise, and she was neutral. And I said, well, what do you need to know that you don't know? What information would help you make a better decision? She said, well, I haven't really looked at my finances in the last 3 to 4 months. I haven't balanced my checking account. I don't really know where I am financially. And I said, okay, you need to go do that. And then we'll do this exercise again. And what it did, it was yucky. I call it yummy and yucky. So,
Yummy and yucky. How technical.
well, it's simple and it's easy to remember, right?
I like that. I like that.
And so she came back and she said, oh my gosh, I'd have to go put it on a credit card and go into credit card debt to do this. And probably isn't the best time. I'm sure the gentleman that was selling her the mastermind was not too happy with me, but well.
You did the integrity thing.
Yeah.
Yes. I occasionally have people who want to do something with me and they're having some financial issues, and I basically say, this isn't the time. It'll cause you more stress. I mean, the whole point of working together is to help you, but if setting it up financially is going to cause you stress, that's not where we want to be right now. Let's get you in a place that you're flowing, your prosperity is flowing, and then do that.
Yeah.
But, and look, I believe in karma. What you do to anyone else in the entire world will loop right back around to you. I'll tell you a silly story. When I was 22 years old, and some girl had stolen my boyfriend. This is how silly this is. And she worked in the same building that I did. And I remember walking outside, and I was really mad at her because she had definitely stolen him. And thank God, by the way, but looking back, but I actually had the thought of keying her car. I was so mad at her.
Oh my gosh.
I never keyed her car because I have brains. Okay. However, the very next day, my car was keyed.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And I am grateful for that, because if there was ever a time in my life that I got see, you can't even think it. This is you came to this earth for much bigger things. You can't even think these kind of things. You got the point? And I remember looking at my car and actually saying, okay, God, I got it fully. And if I ever think about anything being a retaliatory thing, I always remember this one story, and it always like snaps me right out of it immediately. Like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do anything that would hurt someone, no matter what they've done to me.
Well, there's natural law, and there's a law of circulation and a law of correspondence. And I often have clients come to me and they're like, well, I don't, nobody loves me. Well, okay. If nobody loves you, how are you loving yourself? Because you cannot get what you won't give to yourself. We're all one and we're all connected.
Write that down, everybody. I'm writing it down. You cannot get what you will not give to yourself.
Exactly. And so if you want peace, give yourself peace. Make your environment support you. Remove those things, those people, those influences that cause you to not be peaceful. To me, it's really simple, but we overcomplicate it because we're in a culture and a society that values mental constructs more than the intuitive knowing and the gifts of soul.
Yes. I think this conversation is very powerful, because not only do you work one-on-one with people, and you've done that, but you've worked with these amazing people. So Karen, how can people find you?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, Karen Vizer. I do not have a website. They can go to my stand.store.com/Dr. Karen. My email is karenvizer@gmail.com. So any of those things, I'd be happy to talk with anyone. I have a on the stand store. You can book time with me if you'd like to do a connection call and see what it would be like to work together. Be happy to do that. I wanted to share, do we have time, Lee? There was a quote I posted yesterday from Dr. Hawkins, and I would love to share that.
Please.
I'm going to read it off my phone. Wisdom can can ultimately be reduced to the simple process of avoiding that which makes you go weak. Nothing else is required. And that's from Dr. Hawkins from Power versus Force. So it ties back to the body as a compass. If your energy is collapsing, that's making you go weak. If your energy is expanding, it's making you go strong. Simple, simple way to navigate life.
Well, I know when the pandemic came out, I felt very going weak at all of their recommendations.
Me too. Yeah,
Like,
I was a bit of a rebel.
no, and oh, hell no. All right, well, this has been delightful. We'd love to have you come back. How about that?
Oh, I'd love that. That has been fun. I really enjoy talking with you, Lee.
Thank
It's
you
just,
so much. And I was looking forward to this more than anybody can know. And folks, again, we are here on our network. We're a brand new startup. We have absolutely no money. We are all volunteering. I mean, all the tech people are volunteering, the marketing people are volunteering, 20 other people besides me volunteered to be, or actually we were tapped on the shoulder, will you be a host? So please like, share, and comment as much as possible. And I have a gift for you also. If you go to 5typesofenergy.com, I have 5 free videos for you. They're normally $100. If you go to my website, which is milteer.com, there's a video on mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial energy. Each are 5 minutes long. It just gives you some understanding of how the currency of life is created and your 5 kinds of currency that you can corral and prosper with if you know a little bit more about that. So again, please go look at Karen's stuff. I'm going to do my best to get your link up under our link so everybody can just click on that for you. But thank you so much, Karen. I deeply appreciate you being here today.
thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and to get to know you better too.
Well,
So
thank
fun.
you so much. We have a lot in common. We really do. All right,
Yeah.
everybody, that's a wrap. Please, again, tune in to the Blonde Warrior and see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.